Live from the Dead Wolf Inn here in Rivenspire, where the candles flicker like they're afraid of the dark, the rafters creak with every gust of wind, and the mist outside rolls in thick enough to hide anything with claws. If there's anywhere in Tamriel to talk about werewolves, their history, and the long-awaited Update 50 change, it's right here. Welcome back to episode 12 of the Tamriel Report, your weekly ESO podcast. And today we're diving into something that has the entire community howling, literally, the Update 50 Werewolf Revamp. We're going to talk about history, mechanics, roleplay, solo play, and why this update is a massive win for anyone who's ever wanted to embrace the beast within. Before we talk about the new stuff, we need to look back at where werewolves started. Werewolves have been a part of ESO since launch, but they've always lived kind of in a strange middle ground. Amazing fantasy, but kind of clunky execution at times. At launch, werewolves were mostly a novelty. Fun, absolutely. Strong, not really, and sometimes over the years they might get a few improvements, but never really what we're about to see with Update 50. And when it comes to long-term playability, only if you were really committed, and a lot of those players were, guilds that role play with werewolves only or things like that. Then came the 2018 rework, which gave us some different identity features for the werewolves. We have heavy melee focus, bleed-based damage, self-healing, and a true transformation fantasy. But even then, it still felt a bit off. Animations were dated, combat flow was a bit awkward, and role players had one big request: where is the female werewolf model? And Update 50 is finally answering that call. The revamp is more than a visual update. It's going to modernize the entire werewolf fantasy. We're getting a new female werewolf model, update animations for smoother, more feral, and more expressive, and everything we've seen so far from the public test server. The werewolf is a lot scarier, a lot bigger. We've seen the comparisons to the old model and the new model for the werewolf female and male versions both, but also the animations are a lot bloodier and just a lot more of what you would expect from something that is a werewolf. You have cleaner light attack flow, better sustain, more responsive movement, improved sound design, and it seems a lot less awkward to use and a lot more immersive. And the great thing here is the devs have talked about how they're wanting to keep people in that werewolf form a bit more, to make that an easier transition. And that is one thing that I think a lot of people have complained about with the werewolf over the years. Sometimes it's hard to stay in that transformation. And if you're having that kind of role-playing fantasy for the werewolf, you want to be in that transformation as much as possible. But also when it comes to dealing damage, maybe in a dungeon or some harder content, you also want to be able to use your werewolf abilities more than your normal abilities, because that is why you picked that class to be a werewolf. That is what you want to use. You're not wanting to use just normal class abilities. You're wanting to be in that werewolf form as much as possible. To me, it's not just a tweak in Update 50. This is kind of a resurrection for the werewolf just in general, and this is something that players have been asking for a really long time. And like I said, even with the changes we've had in the past, where it has felt a bit better over time, it has never really truly gotten there, in my opinion, to where the werewolf is actually something that you could use not just for some fun, or not for role playing, or not for certain situations maybe, but it sounds like so far from everything we've heard and everything we've seen, that this is going to be the first time that you actually could possibly use the werewolf in a lot of different situations. Even damage in possibly trials, maybe using it as a tank, and actually really being able to do all types of content with the werewolf instead of just a few things here or there. Role players have been begging for this for years. The new female werewolf model is a massive win for immersion, character identity, and storytelling. Anyone, of course, out there that wants to have a female werewolf will finally be able to transform into that. Werewolf guilds and RP communities kind of get a different, I guess, look at how they want to have their community built, and that kind of gives them new life as well. Also, I do really like the model looks of both the male and female werewolves. I like the way they have made them bigger and just look a lot more scary than they did in the past. Now, there's one disappointing thing here that I know a lot of people have talked about is, will the model werewolves or the NPC models actually change? And the devs said earlier this year in one of their live streams that was not the case. The models in game for the NPCs will still be the same. So they said they're going to look at that later down the road and possibly change those. But right now, the kind of consolation they gave to that was your werewolf will be one of one. You're not going to look like the NPCs in the game. You're going to look completely different. You're going to be a lot stronger and a larger character model overall. So they're hoping players really enjoy that. But I do think this is a very big RP win ESO needed. There's a lot of role players out there, and I think they really will enjoy this. I think the part that really surprised me, and I think a lot of people in the community as well, is it seems like werewolves are going to be a really good choice for solo play styles in the game as well. We've talked about things like better sustain, stronger self-healing, faster combat flow, more reliable damage uptime, cleaner rotations, less reliance on perfect timing, being able to stay in that werewolf form for longer. And I think if you are a solo player who wants a build that feels really powerful, but also different from everything else in the game, also you will have that self-sufficient feel that you get with other builds. The werewolf is definitely back on the menu for solo players. For years, werewolves looked cool, but played very kind of clunky, in my opinion. And now they look cool, but also very polished. The transformation feels like a moment. The animations feel more alive. The combat looks a lot more modern. Just the look of the werewolf in general, the models they have used to make them larger and just scarier looking, make the fantasy kind of feel fulfilled finally. ESO's take on the werewolves has always been a good one, in my opinion. You have different things like moonlight rituals, the cursed versus gift duality, pacts, clans, bloodlines. There's a lot of lore when it comes to werewolves inside of ESO. But now with the new models and animations, the lore feels more connected to kind of that gameplay that we've seen for so many years now, or just the stories that you get to hear about werewolves in the game, or just the lore of werewolves and Elder Scrolls across all the games. You're not just a player with a buff now. You're actually going to feel more like a werewolf, and I think that is the biggest takeaway here. Because like I said, players have always said they don't feel like they're informed long enough, and so it kind of did just feel like a buff. You were using, of course, your regular class and your regular abilities, and then you would get turned into a werewolf for a little while, but it didn't last long enough, and players felt like that it was not as useful as it could have been. And that is the one thing that I'm really excited for. The way they're building the werewolf, it looks like we may have possibilities, and I'm at least going to test them out. Who knows if they're going to work, where you could have a lot of different play styles while being a werewolf. And I really want to make a werewolf tank. That's one thing I've always wanted to do in ESO that I've kind of felt like has not always been, it's not like it's not been successful or I couldn't do it, but I always felt like something was a bit off with it, that it never just worked like I needed it to or I wanted it to, really. And I think this will at least give us the opportunity to try a lot of different play styles out with the werewolf now that all of these changes are going through with Update 50. And I'm definitely looking forward to testing out a lot of different stuff with this, because as most of you know, if you hang around the channel, I test a lot of builds in my spare time. That's what I do in game mostly. I try a lot of weird off-meta stuff, putting sets together that most people don't even mess with, and I try to get them to work. Now, that has been really enjoyable to do, but the one thing is, a lot of things over time, you kind of figure out exactly what's going to work and what's not. having these changes come into the game with the werewolf gives me kind of a new thing to look at it and try to build around and try to test out. So it's going to be a lot of fun for me personally, and I think a lot of people out there are going to enjoy it as well. The update shows something important. ZOS is willing to revisit old systems and bring them up to modern standards, even though I know it's taking them a long time to do this. And I know a lot of people out there are asking for this kind of treatment to the vampire as well. And I hope we get that, because I think the game is very healthy when you have a lot of different options on how you want to play. And if the werewolf and the vampire both are at some point equally really good and very usable, I think that's great for the game, for me personally. I think that gives players a lot of options out there. And like I said, if werewolves can get this kind of love, and if ZOS is willing to listen, even though, like I said, I know players have been asking for some stuff for a long time, and it feels like it takes the devs forever to get some things done. I'm just glad now they're starting to look at them. So we can kind of look at other things in the game, like vampires, the Fighters Guild, class skills, and maybe more visual updates, more transformation of these kind of role-playing things. Or more just role-playing focused polish. To me, Update 50, I'm hoping, is not just a werewolf update. It's a signal to what the devs want to do with everything in the game. And the way they're doing content now, I think, in a lot of ways, I know people are disappointed that you're not getting a new zone every single year. But at the same time, if the devs are able to deliver things that we already have in the game, but they can improve upon them to where they almost feel fresh and new, that is kind of a win for me as well, because there's a lot of things that they need to look at that I think people would really enjoy if they were polished up, if they were improved. And I'm hoping that's what Update 50 is, like I said, the signal of. It's just not the werewolf getting an update and then, unfortunately, like we've seen in the past with some things where things get buffed and nerfed and buffed and nerfed to where they're to the point where they're not really useful. I mean, we've seen these changes with the vampire over the last several years, where at times it was really useful to use, and then at times it wasn't. And then we've seen that with mythics and other gear in the game. And I'm hoping we're getting to a point where they're starting to improve all of this stuff in the game just as a whole. So we don't have to see as many drastic changes when it comes to nerfs or buffs. We can see everything kind of working together as it should in ESO. All of these different options being available where we have tons of different ways to play the game. Whether you're someone that's a solo player, whether you're a big fan of just guild trading, or maybe you're a big fan of running in-game trials at the most difficult level, or maybe you're just a role player. If everything in the game kind of keeps, I guess, going in this direction, where they're improving these older things that have been around for a while, but also bringing new exciting things into the game, that's where you get to the point where no matter how you play or how you want to play, you're able to do that, and everyone can enjoy the game kind of just in their own area. And one day, hopefully, they'll get to PvP as well, because I know there's a lot of people out there that ask for that, changes to that. And I'm hoping we get to that point at some time in ESO's life cycle over the next several years. So the takeaway is werewolves aren't just back. They seem like they're going to be better than ever. I think it's a win for role players, for solo players, for fantasy players, or fantasy fans. And ESO gets a fresh dose of kind of hype heading into the rest of this year. Let me know if you're planning on going full werewolf this year. Are you excited about the new look, the new ideas that they have kind of brought into the werewolf in general, the way they've changed the abilities, updated some stuff? I really do think it looks a lot better, and it looks like it's going to perform a lot better as well. Thanks for tuning in to episode 12 of the Tamriel Report. If you enjoyed the episode, hit the like button. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.